It's a continuation of where we stopped on Monday. The subject is Aburi Accord, before the guns began to boom. So this is part 2 of the analysis. I am Edmondo Bilo. Welcome to this class of politics and power. In the last edition of the program, what we did was to walk down history lane to understand events before Aburi Accord. There were complex issues that led to the feuding parties going to Ghana to have a meeting to settle their quarrel. And some of the issues we looked at on Monday were the different conferences, constitutional conferences, that were held to shape Nigeria's federalism. I remember talking about the Lancaster House London Constitutional Conference of 1957. I also talked about the conference of 1958. I drew your attention to the Willis Commission of Inquiry. I also read from the book, This House of Oduduwa Must Not Fall. The reason we read from the book was the insistence of the North to say that certain conditions must be met or they will not be part of Nigeria at independence. And Paolaniwo Ajayi looked at some of those issues in his book, This House of Oduduwa Must Not Fall. We also talked about the Awolowo-Akintola feud that led to Operation Wet Year in western Nigeria. That quarrel between the two gladiators in Yoruba politics at the time also meant that Awolowo was sent to prison. He was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment for treasonable felony. He was accused by the federal government of plot to remove the government of the day. I played Femi Kende in that edition of the program. We also went as far as examining some positions of scholars of politics on what Nigeria was at the time. You listened to Odia Ofemu and you listened to Professor Egusa Osagai. On this edition, we will pay attention to the decisions arrived at in Aburi. Again, we will still try to lay foundations on various subjects that led to the Aburi Accord. I called this one the trouble with Nigeria. Then I asked a question here. Did the North plan to break away from Nigeria after the counter coup of 1966? I will answer the question. Who made the first and boldest attempt to break away from Nigeria? Who acted to break away? Was it Ojukwu? No. It was Isaac Adakaboro from the Niger Delta, an Ijaw man. He was the first Nigerian to come up with a well-orchestrated plan to break away from Nigeria. And he launched an armed insurrection. We'll talk about that on this edition of the program. We'll also talk about events between Ojukwu and Gowon that made both of them to go to Aburi. So welcome again to this edition of State Affairs, where we are looking at Aburi Accord before the guns began to boom. On this edition, you have the opportunity to call in, to engage me. I want to also get your opinion. So there is a number to call. You can take the number now, so that when it's time to call, you will join the discourse. The number is 080-999-18449. I think the number is on the screen. So you can call when the lines are open to join the discourse. And we'll also appeal to you as you listen. You can retweet, you can share, so that we can bring more persons into the loop in the discourse of the past in preparation for the future. The Aburi Accord is a significant historical agreement that emerged from a meeting held in Aburi, Ghana in January 1967. The meeting happened during the stages leading to the Nigerian-Biafran War. It was a meeting attended by high-ranking officials from both Nigerian government and the Biafran side, led by Odumegwu Ojukwu, who at the time was the governor of the Eastern region. It was after Aburi that Ojukwu declared the state of Biafra. Yakubu Gowon led the delegation of the Nigerian side. At the heart of the Aburi Accord was the attempt to find a peaceful resolution to the escalating conflict between the Nigerian federal government, led by General Yakubu Gowon, and the Eastern region, led by Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu. So the accord aimed to address key issues, including the allocation of resources, control over regional affairs, and the status of the Eastern region within Nigeria. During the meeting, a series of agreements were reached, with both sides consenting to a framework for a federal system that would grant more autonomy to the regions, including the Eastern region. The accord also outlined plans for a ceasefire and the withdrawal of federal troops from the Eastern region. However, despite the initial optimism surrounding the Aburi Accord, subsequent disagreement and mistrust between the two parties led to the collapse of the accord. The failure to fully implement the agreement laid out in Aburi ultimately led to a full-blown civil war, which resulted in significant loss of life and widespread suffering. Chief Lekan Alabi is a journalist. He has been around. He loves history. He tells historical stories. In 2021, I asked him, why did the Nigerian side renege on Aburi? He speaks here. On Aburi we stand, Ojukwu insists, Chief Lekan Alabi.
Thank you very much. At the beginning of this program, you said this is Aburi 2021. That is, those who are not born when Aburi report came out in January 1967 and thereafter. Now they can compare and contrast. I was not there when the then Mr. Kenzua advised the then military head of state against implementing the Aburi report, but I can imagine the present generation, if they compare the Aburi report of 1967 and Aburi 2021 as being implemented on this channel, that they would not have asked those who went to Accra in 1967 and you brought a report back, who would not have asked them, excuse me, were you out of the hall when this agreement was prepared? And we heard Ojukwu saying that it was read over by the then Ghanaian military head of state, General Ankara. So, if it was made, agreed, assented, and signed by chief secretaries of 3 chief secretaries, 2 representing Nigeria, 1 representing Biafra, already cast and molded. So why would anybody want to dissolve it? You were there, you met, the thing was typed, read over, signed, and given copies to you. So to me, it was when they got back to Lagos that the federal delegation led by the then head of state, Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, as publicly now known that it was the secretary of the cabinet, the immediate past Oba of Bini, may so rest in peace, who later went to the head of state to pinch him and say, sir, you have signed off Nigeria with this report. So probably the head of state will ask him, so what do you think we should do? Disregard. Disregard.
And he came out with that press conference where he explained what Aburi meant to the Nigerian side.
State Affairs with Edmondo Bilo is live.
Yes, that is Chief Lekon Alabi in 2021. You know, I've been taking on the Aburi discourse for some time, and hopefully, at some point, I will release a document. You know, my thoughts on Aburi and why we are where we are. Remember, Edmondo Bilo is a political scientist. I study politics. I look at it. I look at the theoretical aspect of politics. I monitor the practical aspect of politics. I collect books on politics. The essence is to prepare us for the future. The essence is to prepare a new leadership that understands the power of history. When you understand the power of history, you will know how effective one can be with that knowledge as a leader. History tells you what the future will be like. From Aburi, political scientists could see what the future of Nigeria was going to look like. Some of them predicted war, and war came. So we can predict the future to a good extent by understanding history.